right, this next video is going to begin a series of videos about developmental psychopathology, which is an approach to attempting to understand both typical and atypical development. One thing about developmental psychology, the study of human development, is that we do often, or historically, we've often focused on typical development. In fact, I have met some people in my field who were trained earlier than I was. They were getting ready to retire, and they would make comments like, "Oh, you've had very different training than me. I didn't even learn any diagnostic categories or research about atypical development. It was all focused on quote unquote normal development." And so there has been more recognition in the field that is not the best way to go, because you're going to leave some people out if you take that approach. All right, so developmental psychopathology is a type of approach to studying development. It links usual development or typical development with unusual development or atypical development. I'm trying not to use the words normal and abnormal because they've kind of become the added meaning has been added to those words. So basically, we got to study everybody's development. And so when we do this, especially when the unusual results in special needs. You probably heard that term. Sometimes people hear special needs children and they think of something very specific, but that's a broad group of children who may need accommodations in school. They might need extra support. They might need to do something like go to therapy, take medication. There's just a variety of things, little extra things that they may need that other children don't have to deal with. And so within developmental psychopathology, there are 4 general principles. One of them, abnormality is normal. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Those are 2 different words. How can they go together like that? Abnormality is not as rare as we often present it as. Things like having a diagnosable mental disorder, if you're going to use that terminology, we're kind of moving away from that medicalized terminology. Sometimes people are now saying neurotypical versus neurodivergent. There are different ways to try to communicate with the words, but in terms of concepts, a lot of diversity is present in development. There is no cookie cutter normal individual out there that we can say, oh, that's normal development. We really get a lot more information and conduct a lot more useful research when we recognize that there's diversity. There are a lot of individual differences in development, and we shouldn't think in terms of normal and abnormal development as if they are separate categories. To use some terminology that I use when I discuss temperament, rather than using a categorical approach, rather than putting people into categories, we should use a continuous approach where we focus on a specific characteristic. It could be something like hyperactivity. And we say, okay, so everybody's got some degree of this. How much does this one individual have? Is it high, medium, low? And how does it affect their functioning and their life? That seems to be the more practical, useful approach. All right, now another general principle of developmental psychopathology is that disability changes year by year. When somebody does have problems, when somebody does some aspect of development causes a person to have special needs in the area where it causes difficulty in their life, the degree to which that happens can change from year to year. People can have more needs or less needs or different needs as they develop, as they grow older. Development involves change. When we study psychopathology, mental illness, different terminology, abnormal psychology, different terminology that's been applied, we have to acknowledge that development, that change happens. People change in their psychopathology, their mental illness, to use, the medicalized terms. So a related principle, a third general principle, is that life may get better or worse, right? Some people get worse. Some people improve in their functioning. Some people get to a point where if they had an official diagnosis, they may no longer get their official diagnosis anymore, that they change so much in their functioning, or they change their diagnosis. It's not necessarily because people before got it wrong or this person has been, cured or something. It's just that they changed. Their symptoms changed, and so the description that we apply to them has to change too. And importantly, we have to use words for communication, but those words change with greater knowledge and with social context. So a fourth general principle is that diagnosis and treatment reflect the social context. Really good example. How many of you know anybody who's been diagnosed with hysteria? It's because the label, the diagnostic category of hysteria does not exist anymore. In the time of Freud, reminding that Freud was not a psychologist. Right, in the time of Freud, people could be diagnosed with hysteria. It does not exist anymore as a category, as a concept. Understanding things like schizophrenia. We used to have different subtypes of schizophrenia that people could be diagnosed with, which now we've moved away from that. Homosexuality. Why am I bringing that up when I'm talking about psychopathology? Up until 1980, in my lifetime, I was born in the 70s, up until 1980, you could get diagnosed with homosexuality as a mental disorder that could be listed in your medical chart. It could be, something that you were being treated for. Other categories over time have changed and are changing. We're going to talk about autism in an upcoming video. Our understanding of autism has changed and shifted, and part of the changes that we have seen have been changing the labels. We were applying the labels in a way that didn't seem to be helping individuals with autism completely, because we were using a very strong categorical approach that we've moved away from. And many people will criticize, maybe, we still need to make more changes, more progress, but that's why those things happen. Why you can say, if doctors know what they're doing, if psychology people know what they're doing, how come they keep changing the labels of things? Well, because we do research and we get more understanding and we realize, 20 years ago, this category, this label, this definition seemed to make sense, but we've seen more cases, we've done more research with large samples, and we're realizing that we were missing something. So based on our knowledge, we can improve how we label these things. All right, so this is a very general description of developmental psychopathology, and in future videos I will talk about some specific areas where we would focus on students, because this is these videos for my class are appearing in the unit on middle childhood, so we're going to talk about elementary school age students who might have special needs, and I'll talk about some specific types of special needs.